Hi friends, in this lesson in this unit we're going to look at built-in functions. So built-in functions are very common and we often use them in Python programming. Why? Why do we use them? Because they simplify our task. Each task we want to meet, it is simplified by built-in functions. So let us see what built-in functions are. Alright, so built-in functions are simply predefined functions. What I mean by predefined functions, first let me just break it down. Of course, a function, we can define it. It's a block of code that perform a specific task. What do I mean by this? Well, this statement is very easy. This simply means that we have some lines of code which work together to achieve a certain task and then give you results. So down here I have a mathematical example first, just to illustrate where the idea of functions come from and why it is so powerful. Alright, so now when we look at this function here, this is a mathematical function. Of course, most of you are familiar, but if you haven't taken a class of mathematics, then you get to know it either way. So we have this f of x, which is a function defined in a specific interval of all real numbers, for example. And then this function, when we put, let's say we take x is 0 here, meaning we have 0 times 0, we'll get 0. And then here x is 2, we'll get 2 times 2, which is 4. So simply this function, its task is to find the square of a value. So that was the idea here, to say a function is a block of code that performs a specific task. Alright, we might also be familiar with these trigonometric functions. For example, cos, sinus, and tangent. These functions, we often use them to solve problems, and also they are mostly applicable in resolving problems related to calculus. Yes. So, for example, let's say I want to find the value for sinus pi. Sinus pi, of course, perhaps it's 0. It's just a guess, it's 0. Of course, it's 0, it's 0. But I don't know what is behind the scene, because here you can see I defined it. It's well defined, x times x. Then we know that it's square. But sinus, we don't know what is behind the scenes. So in this case, this we might consider it as a traditional function, so a classical function, and then a sinus cosinus function, or any other function which is a trigonometric function as a predefined function. It is already defined. So when you go deeper in mathematics, you'd find that the sinus function is a function which is odd. Then which is odd, again, it is denoted by this formula: x plus x times x. This is x cubed divided by 3 factorial minus this is x to the power 5 divided by 5 factorial, etc., etc. So it is complex, but we can't be always working with this, and it might be hard, like to be moving fast. So instead, they are already made for us. So with the help of calculators and computers, etc., we can perform calculations fast. So that's the reason why we have predefined functions. So now, coming back to Python. So in Python programming language, we have a couple examples, like a couple of predefined functions or built-in functions. So these built-in functions, we use them every time. And they are very essential because they simplify our programming. So here we have, for example, print, and then pay attention here. We have brackets in front. So print is used to display values. So when you have a value, you put it in print function, then it will display it. So len, it's used to determine the length. So it will return the length of either maybe a list, a dictionary, or maybe a string. So let's say a string. In our previous unit, where we were talking about strings, we saw that a string is indexed. So here you can determine the length of a string. So we have also an int function. This int function is used for converting string values to numeric values. So examples of these string values, for example, 1 in quotation marks, which will become 1 as a numerical value where you can perform mathematical operations. So here we have float. Float as well, it's used for converting values, numerical values, into decimal, or of course numerical values, specifically decimals. For example, 1.4, including 1 itself, so it will be 1.0, whatever. Then it will become 1.4 from string to decimal. And then string for converting numerical values to string values. For example, we have 1 is equals to this string value, which is 1 in quotation marks. Alright, that is it for built-in functions. Be mindful that these are powerful tools we use in programming language, predefined functions. There are more predefined functions than stated here. So let us make use of them and master them, and we have to have them at our fingertips to simplify our task in programming. Alright, thank you so much for joining me. See you in the next lesson.